All right, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack one of the most spectacular, head-spinning corporate collapses in recent history. So picture this. It's 2019. There is one single company being universally hailed as the absolute future of work. Wall Street is completely mesmerized. Tech investors are literally throwing billions of dollars at it, and this thing is expanding globally at a breakneck, frankly terrifying speed. Everyone's convinced it's the next Amazon. But then, the unthinkable happens. In the span of just 30 days, that entire empire evaporates into thin air. It exposes this massive, tangled web of corporate greed, bizarre cult-like behavior, and honestly, some of the most catastrophic financial mismanagement we've ever seen. So today, we're analyzing the downfall of an empire built purely on hype and diving deep into the profound financial flaws that doomed it from day one. Let's get into it. $47 billion. Just let that number breathe for a second. 47 billion. That was the peak valuation of WeWork. The stakes here absolutely could not have been higher. This wasn't some scrappy startup trying to find its footing. This was a colossal financial entity that had somehow convinced the smartest guys in the room that it was worth a king's ransom. But you gotta wonder, right? How do you get investors to hand over that kind of unprecedented cash for a company that, at the end of the day, literally just subleases office space? Well, to pull that off, you have to engineer the ultimate illusion. Section 1. The tech valuation illusion. To really understand how the entire financial world got so thoroughly played, we have to look at the guy pulling the strings. WeWork's intensely charismatic CEO, Adam Neumann. He wasn't just a chief executive, he was a master illusionist. He deeply understood the psychology of modern venture capital. He famously looked investors in the eye and declared that WeWork's mission wasn't just to lease desks, but to, quote, elevate the world's consciousness. It's an incredibly absurd, grandiose promise for a real estate firm, right? But it worked. It worked flawlessly. Silicon Valley was starved for these epic world-building narratives, and by wrapping his company in the language of a global movement, Neumann successfully disguised what was fundamentally just a very mundane traditional property management operation. He wasn't selling a lease. He was selling a lifestyle.
The core valuation arbitrage Neumann pulled off was, honestly, a masterclass in financial deception. Think about it. If you pitch a real estate company, the market is going to value you modestly, exactly like a traditional property manager. Your valuation is strictly tied to tangible assets and, slow, predictable margins. But if you pitch that exact same company as a revolutionary tech platform powered by culture and community, boom, investors will write you a blank check. Neumann aggressively insisted WeWork was not a real estate business. He claimed it was a tech ecosystem, like a social network brought into the physical world, and therefore it deserved a massive tech company revenue multiple. And the biggest whale in the financial sea swallowed the hook. Masayoshi Son, the head of SoftBank's massive vision fund, met with Neumann for a grand total of 12 minutes. 12 minutes, and then decided to invest billions, famously telling Neumann that he just wasn't being crazy enough.
Section 2. The fatal business model. Beneath that glossy tech facade, there was a completely fatal mathematical flaw. Backed by billions in capital and a literal directive to go be crazier, WeWork went into hypergrowth mode. But the underlying mechanics of this empire were basically a house of cards. It all boils down to unit economics. We know this is simply the direct revenue versus the cost of a business model. But the golden rule of venture capital is that if your economics don't make sense on a micro level, they are going to be absolutely catastrophic on a global macro scale. Growth doesn't magically fix broken math, it just accelerates it. And WeWork's foundational math was completely upside down right from the start. Here is the fatal flaw in how WeWork actually operated. They took on massive, long-term liabilities by signing incredibly long, astronomically expensive commercial leases in major cities all over the world, often locking themselves in for like 10 to 15 years. To pay for those unyielding, massive obligations, they relied entirely on short-term assets. We're talking independent freelancers, small startups, transient workers who are only locked in to pay on a month-to-month basis. It is a textbook asset-liability mismatch. They were legally on the hook for massive fixed real estate costs while heavily relying on unpredictable, fluctuating income that could just evaporate the second the economy shifted or a recession hit. Section 3. Torching the SoftBank billions. Fueled by that crazy influx of venture capital, WeWork's mismanagement reached staggering new heights. As long as the private money kept flowing, the illusion held up, and it allowed this culture of extreme excess to really take root. But the financial reality behind the scenes of that hypergrowth was super grim. $3,000. Internal financial docs would eventually reveal that WeWork was burning through $3,000 every single minute. That level of cash burn was utterly unprecedented, even by high-growth Silicon Valley standards. They were just rapidly opening sprawling new locations across the globe at incredible losses, basically using SoftBank's venture capital to subsidize the rent of their tenants, just to maintain the illusion of exponential growth. And, it wasn't just operational losses driving this insane burn. It was shocking self-dealing. Adam Neumann spent $60 million of company money on a luxury private jet for his own travel. And in one of the most bizarre corporate moves imaginable, he actually trademarked the word "we" personally and then forced his own company to buy the rights back from him for nearly $6 million. No way, right? But it gets worse. He personally owned several commercial properties and was leasing them back to his own company to generate massive personal profits. It was absolute financial malpractice happening right out in the open, all facilitated by a board that completely refused to implement even basic oversight. Section 4. The IPO reality check. The whole illusion worked flawlessly as long as private money propped it up. But the music finally stopped in late 2019 when WeWork filed for its initial public offering. For the very first time ever, the company was forced to open its books to the public by filing its S-1 document, subjecting itself to actual regulatory scrutiny. And what the financial world saw when they opened those documents shocked them to their core. The remaining pillars of the illusion were instantly dismantled. The hype promised a tech giant. The reality was a classic middleman real estate play hidden behind a trendy curtain. The hype suggested a highly profitable venture. The reality was a massive financial black hole with absolutely no clear path to profitability. And the hype sold a visionary leader, but the reality exposed massive, shocking conflicts of interest. Wall Street analysts absolutely tore the business model apart, exposing that WeWork possessed almost zero actual proprietary technology to justify a software company's valuation. The backlash was instant and brutal. It was the violent collision of illusion and reality. WeWork's valuation violently cratered from its peak of $47 billion down to less than $8 billion in the blink of an eye. Institutional investors completely balked at the astronomical losses and the total lack of corporate governance. And remember, this massive collapse didn't happen over years. It happened in a matter of weeks. The IPO had to be completely abandoned just to save the company from zeroing out entirely on the public market. Section 5. The Golden Parachute. Facing total ruin, the board took desperate action as the company spiraled toward Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Adam Neumann was officially ousted. But the mechanics of his departure reveal a really frustrating truth about the upper echelons of corporate finance. The master illusionist Adam Neumann was paid a staggering $1 billion golden parachute just to walk away and hand over voting control. He essentially leveraged the sheer scale of the disaster he himself created into a massive personal payout. Meanwhile, thousands of everyday employees, the actual workforce who built the physical spaces, managed the communities, and completely bought into the hype, they were laid off with virtually nothing. Their stock options were rendered entirely worthless. The guy who orchestrated the financial black hole walked away a billionaire, while everyone else paid the ultimate price for his miscalculations. WeWork stands today as the ultimate cautionary tale of the modern tech boom. It proved that when hype replaces a viable, fundamentally sound profit model, even the biggest, shiniest empires can vanish overnight. Because at the end of the day, the basic laws of financial gravity always reassert themselves. So I'll leave you with this final thought to consider. When charisma replaces compliance, who really pays the price? Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the hype, and I'll see you in our next deep dive.